Okay, so we're going to put in the yeast nutrients and energizer. These chemicals, you need to put them in to help the yeast activate and do well. Now I've got a half a teaspoon measuring spoon here. All right, I'm going to make sure that the powder is even with the top of the spoon, not lumped up. It should be flat and even. And this looks very flat and even. I'm going to spread it in there. That is the yeast nutrient. Those are nutrients that will help the yeast to grow. This one is the yeast energizer. This gives the yeast a little more energy. It's like food for the yeast. I got a half a teaspoon of that. Shouldn't need more. And then pectin enzyme. This pectin enzyme will help when you're using any kind of fruit. The pectins are the things that make it coagulate like Jell-O, and you want to break those down. You don't want those in your must, staying like whole. So we're putting a half a teaspoon of pectin enzyme. Alrighty. Those are the main fortifiers for the yeast. And we'll just mix that up a little bit. I just like to put those in before I check the pH. I don't think they affect the pH very much, but just in case. All right. So it doesn't take much to put them in. It's a very small amount. All right, when it comes to pH, this little bottle of test strips, the test strip is only a stick with a testing tip on it. The tip is kind of blue, and you will immerse it, and then you'll check the color with the chart on the bottle. Okay, so here we are checking the color. I'm going to do this in the light. All right, and what I'm seeing is about 3.6. Now, according to good mead making, you want to ferment around 3.8. And sometimes this can take a little guesswork. So we would be like raising the pH. It doesn't take much. I'm just going to put like a half a teaspoon of some calcium carbonate in there. This is the they're calling it chalk. I may have put a little more in there, but it's okay. It's it was very close, 3.6 to 3.8. It's not gonna probably affect the fermentation very much, but because I know it's just slightly low, I gave it a little bit of calcium carbonate. All right. And we'll do a quick double check. And I can tell you that the new strip is a little bluer. According to the chart, you want to be a little bluer. So it could be between 3.8 and 4. And I'm satisfied with that. Okay, so now we come to a very important part of the process. This is where we are going to measure the amount of sugars in the must. We have a test cylinder here with the hydrometer inserted. The hydrometer, of course, will have measurements on the hydrometer. What's going to happen is we're going to start down here. The hydrometer should float higher in this blue area. We want to be right between the blue and the green here. That's the point where the correct amount of alcohol will be generated. Enough sugars to generate about 11 or 12% alcohol is right here on the edge of the green. And if those sugars are there, when the yeast does its job, it eats those sugars, and then the hydrometer will sink deeper into the must when it's done. And we hope to finish up here at about 0. So we're going to start by putting our must in the test cylinder. Now I do this with a syringe. Okay, I like to mix this up in the cylinder, make sure there's no air bubbles in it, and then allow the hydrometer to float. And we don't have enough sugars, nowhere near where we need to be. We are, it's hard to read these things on the phone. We're about 1.045, somewhere in that range. All right, so we got to add more honey. That's our sugar. Okay, so after being low on sugar, I have procured another 12 ounces. This is another pound of honey. So I'm going to put this in. I have warmed this up a little bit in the microwave. It's not good to put honey in a microwave. You can destroy a lot of the enzyme and stuff, but I just did it a little bit. You never want to boil honey in a microwave. So we need to mix this up. Get those honeys in solution. And then we will check the specific gravity with the test meter again. Okay, so after adding more honey, so now I've got about 2 pounds of honey in here. Let's go back and see what our hydrometer reading will be. Alrighty. All right, and we're into the green now. We're about 0.60. And this must is still a little bit cold. And I think that could be affecting the reading, but I think we're just going to put a little more honey in it and push it up to about 90. Because we definitely want to make sure there's enough sugar there to produce the proper amount of balance with the alcohol and everything. Okay, back to Strawberry Rhubarb Mead. I had to add quite a bit more honey to this, and as a point of procedure, I probably have had a little too much liquid and it diluted it more. Like I went up to that 1.5 gallons. Probably could have went to 1.25 gallons. I've added probably 2¼ pounds of honey total, maybe a little more. And I finally got the hydrometer to correctly read. You can see here we're 60, 70, 80, and it's floating about 90. All right, that's the correct starting specific gravity for the amount of sugars we need to ferment this. Now, we only have one more step before we put this away for 24 hours. When we're using a lot of fruit and mixing it up like this in our must and stuff, we have a level of contamination that can happen from wild yeast and other stuff. And we don't want that. We don't want anything affecting our yeast other than the wine yeast that we used to ferment this with. We don't want any off flavors, anything out of whack that might be accompanying those berries or that rhubarb or even the honey a little bit. Honey itself is naturally bacterial, but it doesn't mean it may have some other minerals or yeast or stuff like that in the honey too. These Camden tablets are kind of like a sterilizing agent, potassium metabisulfite. And when you see wine that says it's sulfited, this is what they're doing. They're adding a metabisulfite, this potassium, to the must before they do the fermentation. We were going to add this, and it's actually going to sterilize the whole must bucket here. And but we have to wait 24 hours for the sterilization to work and to dissipate more, so that it's not going to have any effect on the yeast when we do actually introduce the wine yeast to ferment the mead. Okay, so when you're using tablets like this, I can tell you the best thing to do is put the tablets in a spoon, and then use your other hand, and another spoon to kind of crush them. You can push down hard. I didn't quite get it crushed yet. Sorry for the movement here. Okay, so they're starting to crush. So you want to crush them up to a powder, and then put that in the must. Stir it up. We have the right amount of sugars. Once that's in there, then we're going to let this sit for 24 hours, and we're going to come back and talk about actually pitching the yeast, the wine yeast, and setting this bucket up for fermentation.